Long ago, God spoke to our ancestors in many and various ways by the prophets, but in these last days, God has spoken to us by a Son. Greetings and peace from Chibuktuk, the great harbor, in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. It is with gratitude that I, Pastor McNabb, and the people of Resurrection in Halifax join with you and other congregations across the ELCIC to reflect on the Word. Flip through photo albums from my husband's family, and you will see picture after picture of family members on vacation pointing to the attractions they have stopped to see. I've always wondered about the pointing, as if the viewer can't see the attraction in the photo. I have concluded that the pointing had two purposes. One was for emphasis, and the other was to keep children's hands from bothering or teasing siblings or cousins. Pointing in the pictures to the main event was not invented by my husband's family. Way back in medieval times, paintings often had figures pointing. For example, the Grunwald altarpiece has John the Baptist pointing at Jesus being crucified, as if the image of Jesus crucified doesn't already have the viewer's attention. Lucas Cranach the Elder painted the crucifixion with Luther pointing at the Word, an open Bible in his hand, while a reformer in the group beside Luther points to the cross and the crucified Christ. Go back farther, and we hear today's gospel, a story of John the Baptist pointing. Look, here is the Lamb of God. As much as we might find pointing in photos and paintings unnecessary, the world is in desperate need of pointers, people whose mission it is to point out the Lamb of God. Pointers are needed, for many have not heard, and those who have are preoccupied, occupied. Heads are busy. Hearts are heavy. People are lost in schedules and everyday responsibilities. Even the most attuned need the occasional pointer to be jolted into seeing, turning around, and waking up. Car horns, alarms, and timers were all invented because people lose focus and get caught up not paying attention to the world around them, including where God is in the world. As followers of Jesus and practitioners of faith, we have the skills to be pointers. Look, here is the Lamb of God. Once upon a time, cartography maps mapped known areas and named settlements and features. Places on the edges, the unexplored, the unknown, were marked with phrases like, "Here be dragons." As people, we understand this practice and readily participate in marking areas. Look, here be war. Here be racism. Here be injustice. Here being a falling apart of the healthcare system. Here be a truck convoy. Look, here be wrong. Followers of Jesus and practitioners of faith get stuck into the world's pointing of fingers, forgetting that the gospel is to point towards God, God's love, grace, and mercy, and the work of the kingdom. How many of you had to point when posing for family photos? No matter, because today we are going to take a moment to practice pointing at the main attraction. So get your pointer finger ready and follow my lead. As I point to a person in the congregation, do you know what I see? Look, there be Christ. Look, there be Christ. Look, there be Christ, to those of you on the other side of the video screen. Now you try it. Go on, try it. Yes, we have. Look, the Lamb of God. in our skill set. We just identified and pointed to Christ in our midst. We can take this skill into the world with us. Now, I know it's going to be harder to practice in the world, but you have it. You can do it. During the practice of pointing to Christ, you didn't think about there be dragons, did you? Because being practitioners of faith is continually returning to simply sharing and highlighting the gospel, pointing to God present in the world. The letter of the Corinthians tells us, just as the testimony of Christ has been strengthened among you, so that you are not lacking in any spiritual gift as you wait for the revealing of Christ. This is the second part of John the Baptist's "Look, the Lamb of God." John has a more pointed practice, the practice of testimony, of telling his testimony of Christ. I saw the Spirit descending from heaven like a dove, and it remained on Jesus. I myself did not know him, and so on. Now, for those of you who are one step ahead of the preacher and where the preacher is going, as I am a guest in your midst, not knowing how talkative you may be, and not wanting to overly stress out the person delivering the sermon in your midst, I will not ask you to turn to your pewmate and have you testify of Christ, an experience of Christ that you have witnessed. But consider, if I did ask you to testify of Christ, what would you tell? I suspect that many of you are quite relieved that I am not asking you to tell. Perhaps you find yourself tongue-tied, can't think of an example, or are not so courageous. Recently in Halifax, the church started hosting a community story circle. Each gathering of the circle has a theme, and those gathered are invited to share a story on that theme for the rest of the group to hear. Everyone has a chance to share their story. Before we get to the main storytelling time, facilitators have found it important to do a few warm-up exercises designed to get people comfortable with each other and speaking in a group, to warm up imaginations and practice organizing thoughts and articulating feelings. What is learned from community story circles is that, one, storytelling is difficult at first and can be uncomfortable. And second, storytelling is a skill that can be learned, practiced, and honed. Testimony, a public recounting of a God experience or a declaration of faith, is storytelling. Like storytelling, the ability to give testimony can be learned, practiced, and honed. Testimony is modern examples from your life experience that are the gospel. Testimony is an excellent kind of pointing. You are giving a pointed account, a pointed interpretation of an event, telling stories and talking with pointed reference and direction to God, God's love, the work of the kingdom. A beginning practice is to reflect on that to which you point. Look, here be Christ, and articulate the scene in words. Look, there's Christ. That person has taught me about peace in times of difficulty. I've seen them pray. They have prayed for me. No matter what the person faces, they radiate a divine sense of grace and peace. Testifying to Christ is framing what we see and experience from a Christ perspective and practicing the telling of the story in testimony style and testifying it to the world. The sunrise this morning was beautiful. God, the Creator, warmed my heart through this gift. I did hear that on the news last night, and my first response was a prayer. Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. The news didn't change me through the day, but I did. I felt a peace and hope greater than myself, and because of that was able to figure out how to address the circumstance with a doable action. In the aftermath of Hurricane Fiona, I saw people helping each other. To me, that means God's love was being passed from neighbor to neighbor. These kinds of remarks in our everyday conversation and responses are pointed. It is more than just a conversation that we are engaged in. It is pointed testimony looking to, look, there is the Lamb of God. Today, we claim the pointed text from the letter to the Corinthians. You are not lacking in any spiritual gifts as you wait for the revealing of Christ. We are not lacking the skill, the spiritual gift of being pointers, basic pointing and pointed storytelling. Even as we wait for the revealing of Christ, we point out Christ already revealed. As followers of Jesus and practitioners of faith, may 2023 be the year our photo albums, our social media feeds, our annual congregational reports, our words, our actions, and our lives boldly point and testify, look, there is the Lamb of God. Look, there is Christ.